Hello, listeners. This is the Camp Pod, where we talk all things camp, and I'm your host, Alex Weissman. And on today's episode, I'm joined by a very special guest. I am here with my own father. Dad, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Um, I think we should start off with giving the people a brief explanation. So let's go with how many years were you a camp counselor for?
I was a camp counselor for 2 years,
And what years were they?
1978 and 1979.
Okay, and what was your role while you were a camp counselor?
Because I was transitioning from being a camper to being a counselor, what we were in essence were relief counselors, that when other people had days off, we would fill in those. So we had a chance to work in a lot of different areas, either directly with the kids on that side or directly with the activities, helping out with sports and or on the waterfront or wherever else we were needed.
Okay, I think I understand. What would you think for the expectations? Obviously, you were a camper at this camp before, leading into becoming a counselor. How did you feel about having a responsibility that spanned a lot of different areas of the camp?
Well, I liked it because again, I liked the camp that I went to as a camper, so I those most of the activities that they did were activities I enjoyed doing. Not all of them. There were certain things that I was better at than other things, and certain things that I liked more than other things. But, there was nothing there. I would say that I liked certain things more than other things, but there wasn't anything there that I really disliked.
Yeah, no, I think that's the blessing when you're at a camp that you really can appreciate. You're there, and things that are to your liking can help you orient your summer in a way that makes it more exciting and more fun
Right,
for you and the kids that you're in charge of.
right.
Um, did you expect the social life aspect of being a camp counselor to play a big role in your summer?
Sure. Because remember that when you're there as a camper, particularly at the kind of sleepaway camp that I was working at, when you're a camper, your entire existence is regimented in terms of where you need to be and where you need to to go. And when you're a counselor, not only do you have much more flexibility, you get a day off. And in that day off, obviously, there's a whole lot more, particularly on the social aspect, that you have the ability to do. Not the least of which is that when you're a counselor, you have the ability to leave camp.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You know, touching on the whole aspect of being there at a sleepaway camp, especially a sleepaway camp, because I've only ever worked at a day camp. But when you're talking about a place where you're not leaving for 7 weeks or however many, usually
Well, the
seven,
kids.
but yeah, but I mean you're there the entire time, and sometimes it is nice to get that night off and that day off because I mean you're at it 5.5 days in a row. And there's like nothing you can. You're there. That's what you
Right.
sign
And
up
as a
for.
camper, you're there for 7 days in a row. So,
To be fair, the summer is tailored for them, not for you.
true.
You're in charge of helping them have a good time. I think that leads really nicely into our next question, though. What do you think is the hardest part about being a camp counselor?
Trying to connect with people that um, are are different than you. It's like any group of people, there are always going to be ones that you like more than other ones. That's part of it. Part of it are people that have similar backgrounds and similar approaches that are just easier to relate to. Then there are individual people that are just challenging, whether it's because they're foreign campers with a limited use of English, so you're not sure how to. And then there are kids whose worldviews are, for whatever reason, are just fundamentally different than yours. Maybe it's the way that they grew up, maybe it's their attitude. Whatever it is, it just requires a lot more attention, a lot more thought, and a lot more follow through to reach out to connect with those kids.
I agree. That's really well put. You know, it doesn't have to come out to um, when you have enough knowledge of the way people are. I think it's easy to establish a fundamental difference from like, like, oh, I hate this kid. I can't be around him. You can accept it for what the situation is, which is at the end of the day, you have X amount of time during the summer where you need to figure out how to make it work. And you have to be the bigger person because the whole goal is that it's for them. It's not for you. You're paid to make it for them.
Right.
How do you think you managed to overcome that?
I don't know. You take the examples of the people that were set before you, particularly when I did it, although I guess ostensibly there was a counselor handbook that you were supposed to read, which I'm not sure that I did. But I mean, again, I was in the fortunate position of not trying to come into this cold, that I had seen it from the other side. And, you certainly, even without trying to study it, you just have a reflexive way of understanding what works and what doesn't work. You probably shouldn't hit the kids. That's that probably falls in the bad side of things.
Yeah.
So
No, yeah, it's always. I think someone touched on this before. I don't remember possibly who, but I think it was. I think you get the chance to emulate the counselors that you had when you were a camper, and you get a chance to see things when it's your turn to watch children. That some of the strategies and some of the things they did, you get a chance to look at it when you get a chance to do it. When you get a chance to lead, you get to think about the times that other people were leading you, and you see, oh, I remember when they did that thing that really helps me, and I guess that's why they did it, because it helps them. Other than yourself, who at camp do you think played the biggest role in making sure that your summer ran as smoothly and was the best it could be?
Well, I mean, again, you have the people that sort of you report to that ultimately have some control over that, but mostly it's about, judging in yourself and trying to take the examples that that were set in the past when you were a camper and trying to meet them.
Definitely. I think that's like you're your own worst enemy, but you're your own best friend. It's kind of it's a double-edged sword.
And it's a work in progress. Part of the things that, one of the allowances that you get as a junior counselor as opposed to a full-fledged counselor is that it's supposed to be a learning experience. And by having a learning experience, it's perfectly okay to make mistakes.
Definitely. I think that mistakes are a part of the job. And I think that because you have to see what the kids react to, which is the interesting part. At least what I found when I was working is that you can't make a mistake and just have it be this thing that is focused on too often. You have to be able to
Particularly by
look at it.
yourself.
Exactly. You have to look at it.
Learn from it and move on.
Exactly. And I think not only is that a helpful skill in life, but the truth is that in life you get to do that on your own. If you make a mistake, usually you only look at it how as it pertains to you. But the truth is that when you're there with kids who don't understand the things that adults would, is that you have to take those liberties into account.
Yes, I agree.
I think we should start going into the takeaways of summer. So, how important were your co-counselors in camp in making sure that you could enjoy your summer?
I don't think it's the job of the co-counselors to make sure that you enjoy your summer. I think the job of the co-counselor is to make sure you're helping the kids enjoy their summer. If you want to hang out with them on your days off, that's one thing, but particularly the counselors that you're working with, you're there generally in a support role to them because that's what you're there to do. Nobody is taking a junior counselor and saying, okay, you're now in charge of all of these kids and nobody's going to help you. So you generally come in sort of slotted as the co-pilot as opposed to the pilot. So what their expectations are is that you support them, that you back them up, that that's what you're there to do. And regardless of the way that you want to do things and the way that you want to present things, you really need to follow the lead of the person that's in charge.
I think that's well said. I think that there's a greater goal. I think that collaboration is important, but I also think that, and like we talked about, I think earlier in the podcast, earlier in the episode, is that it's important to remember what the objective is. Like, yeah, even though you may not be like an adult, you're there to do a job, and you
Right.
have to make sure that that's the focus of your everyday life
I
at
agree.
that point. And to wrap things up, do you think it's important for people at a younger age to explore a job like working at a summer camp?
I think a young person should try to get as many experiences as jobs as possible. I think it's the only way to really sort of understand, your place in the world. How you respond to fast food workers is very different if you've been a fast food worker. The way you respond to a taxi driver is very different if you've been a taxi driver. And you see what this interaction is. One of a really important thing, particularly if you are interested in teaching, but more importantly, if you're interested in having children. Being a camp counselor and looking back at that, the good thing about having a large group of kids is that you generally have every kind of kid at some point or another in your group. That you have kids that are the high achievers, you have the kids that are brilliant, you have the kids that are defiant, you have the kids that are really defiant, you have the kids that are difficult in every different way. And it's a cross section of your life and what's going to come ahead of you. And particularly as you come of age, it just gives you a better understanding of the world.
I think that's very well said. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Join us next time when we explore more things about the nature of camp.